So, you decided to get into Warhammer and you just went to the game store and got your combat patrol. Well, the advertisements say an army in a box, but that may be a little bit of a white lie. It does have a good foundation for an army in a box for most of those combat patrols, but a lot of times to get to a full 2,000 points, you need quite a bit more. So, today we're going to be talking about the 5 key things you need to add to that combat patrol in order to build out a strong army, like some of the ones you see behind me, that will be able to be played on the tabletop and have a lot of fun with. For most armies, combat patrol boxes are a pretty good place to start. It's a good foundation to get you the basics you need to get to at least close to a 500-point game. But there are a lot of holes and issues like that. I definitely go check out combat patrol reviews on several different channels. Some of my favorites are done by Warhammer, so go check those out. If you guys would like my breakdown as well, let me know in the comments below. I may hold off until after 11th edition starts, and we get the full combat patrols there. But I can do that if that's something you guys are interested in. But for now, let's talk about what it'll take to get you to the roughly 1,000-point mark. The 1,000 points is where you can really start playing the game and really seeing the full scale of tactics. A lot of times in a 500-point game, you're limited on what you can and can't do. And you're missing things like vehicles and things like that that would pull away a lot of your unit count and make it a lot harder to play if you tried to play them in a 500-point game. So let's dive into it. But first, let's have a word from our sponsors today, W Energy. W is one of my oldest sponsors and is one of my favorite energy drink companies ever. They have... Oh, sorry about that. Just enjoying a nice, clean W Energy. It's our new sponsor on this channel that I'm super, super excited to have involvement with. They're a clean energy company that specializes in unique flavors and a bunch of different varieties of products. In the past, I've had some health problems in my life, and I've become very particular about what I take in. And unfortunately, in the energy world and in the hydration and electrolyte world, it's pretty hard to actually be super detailed without spending a ton of money. And that's why I enjoy W. They're a very clean and healthy alternative to your big energy drinks like Monster. But on top of that, they're actually designed with electrolytes. They also come with the electrolyte-specific version called W Hydro that is also a big part of what I take in. So I would definitely recommend checking them out at w.gg. And if you use code WARGAME, you can get 10% off any of your purchases. I also have a link down below in the description so you can go check out their starter pack. Most combat patrols come with a leader of some kind. A leader that will help buff your units and is designed to go with the units that come in the box. Keyword there is most times. There's been several combat patrols that have had leaders that don't tie with any of their units. Some come with a leader that is a lone operative, which is great. Lone operatives are actually really, really helpful in the game. But this is usually the first place you want to start. It creates a plot hole that you need to fill. Sometimes, if you're really lucky and you get a really good combat patrol that has a multi-version leader, you can get multiple combat patrols and be super successful with that. But that's not always the case. A lot of times you need a second leader that can buff and support units. For example, with Space Marines, the most common example of this is adding an apothecary. An apothecary will buff your units and help you heal and recover, while your captain will give you fight buffs. So having both of those on the table is a super common thing to see with Space Marine players. Other times you may run into other issues with units that need to be buffed, but the leader doesn't buff them properly. One of the great examples of this was with the White Scars Combat Patrol that was a limited combat patrol. It had probably the coolest character, in my opinion, in all of Warhammer 40k. That's Saboten Khan. He's my favorite model. I haven't painted him yet. He's literally sitting on my painting table right now. But his buffs are designed to go with the bikes, which is a major part of the White Scars, but you also have a lot of assault intercessors. So getting a secondary leader who can help buff them is super, super helpful. In my case, I have a lieutenant. I have an apothecary as well that go with these units and help buff them and support them. This has helped me balance out the army and make it a lot more functional on the tabletop. It runs really well in tests, and once I get it fully painted and based, I'm really, really excited to get it out on the tabletop. If you want to see how I'm coming along with that, go check out my social media. I've got posts on Instagram and TikTok showing that army that you can see in abundance. But getting back on track, that second leader is critical. Sometimes you may want to pick up a third as well. A lot of armies typically run about 4 leaders of some kind. Typically, you'll have an epic hero, like, for example, Spoden Khan, and then you'll have 2 or 3 other characters. In some cases, you're going to have a lot more than that. My White Scars, once again, has 3 librarians, an apothecary, and a lieutenant, and a second captain. I have a captain and Terminator armor as well. So I have 7 leaders in that army at full 2,000 points. But for your starters, start with 1. Pick a character you think's cool that has some buffs that'll help out your units, and go from there. No matter what edition of Warhammer 40k we're talking about, objectives are key to winning a game. So you need more objective takers. Typically, each combat patrol box will have at least 1 objective taker in it, but you're going to have to deal with 5 objectives on a full 2,000 point game. Typically, 1,000 points is 3-ish. So having 1 objective taker is not going to suffice. You can double up. For example, once again, going back to the White Scars Combat Patrol, this is kind of what sparked this whole thought process was, what do I need to build out this Combat Patrol into a functional army? I already had most of my White Scars, so it wasn't super relevant, but that's what started the thought process. I needed more objective holders. With White Scars, they've got a lot of fluff and bikes and zippy things, but I needed units that could go and hold objectives. So I needed more Assault Intercessors. But objective holders aren't always the same unit. Depending on which faction you're in, you may have hundreds of options. For example, with Space Marines, I brought in a unit of 5 Infernus Marines. I'm going to have them hold my back objective, but there's a lot of different things you can do with them. And it gives you a lot of opportunities to be creative and expand outside your reach and realm. And buying the boxes of these objective takers that aren't in the combat patrol sometimes gives you a lot more cool options. So checking those out and seeing what might be best for you is probably the best place to start for your second option. Once again, if your combat patrol is super, super good and comes with a leader and objective takers that you want, maybe pick up a second combat patrol and knock out pretty much all of this list in one fell swoop. But if that's not the case for you, look at some objective takers and grab those next. Now that you've got your objective takers and your leader, you need something to tote them around. At 1,000 points, your board gets considerably bigger. You're playing with more spread out objectives, and walking places just isn't going to work. You need to bring in a dedicated transport. This transport is going to be key to getting your army wherever you need to go. Whether that's an Impulsor or a Land Raider, if you're a Space Marine, or whatever your faction's dedicated transport may be, this would be the time to get it. You can get them for pretty cheap. I would definitely recommend checking the secondhand market. Dedicated transports always go for super cheap secondhand. You can find rhinos and impulsors and things like that everywhere. That's because a lot of combat patrols come with them in them. So if you've already got one and you only need one, great. A lot of times you need 2 at a 2,000 point army to haul around troops and get them places, especially if you're playing heavier, slower units. For example, if you're playing Leagues of Votann, you're going to need a lot of transports because your units do not move fast. There's no point in having all of your units just try and walk places on a large board with a lot of terrain. So getting that dedicated transport is going to be critical to you. There's a lot of different options you can look at. Some tanks can transport units, some like the Hecatan Land Fortress. Others, you're going to need a specific troop carrying unit. For example, with Space Marines, not all of your tanks transport troops, and if they do, they don't transport the right troops. For example, with Space Marines, you typically want to transport, they're going to haul your Terminators, and if your Terminators can't be hauled places, they don't get anywhere fast. Especially if you're playing, like I do, with Assault Terminators. Those need to be hauled right up to the battlefield and dumped so that they can slam into things. If you don't do that, they're just going to kind of impotently walk across the field and maybe eventually get shot off the board before you can get close. So the third thing I would definitely recommend, like we just discussed, is your dedicated transport. If your combat patrol came with a dedicated transport, I would turn this into a tank. So it's a big thing killer. That is your second alternative for this category. Both of those are super, super important. If I were to take this list to a full 2,000 points, the tank would be number 6. But for now, let's hop on to the next one. Now that you've got all of your big chunky units that are ready to move onto the board, you need a specialist killer. You need something that can take out other teams' characters and hold objectives and things like that from a distance. You need your sniper, whether that be a Vindicar Assassin or a squad of Eliminators. There's a lot of different options throughout your factions for your character killers. Having that precision keyword is going to be vital for you to look for, but once you find it, they're a major win to bring into your army. Especially in 1,000-point games, the buffs and strengths that your characters add to units are very, very powerful. They're oftentimes game-breaking at 1,000 points, but that's what makes them fun. And from what I've heard about 11th edition so far, it sounds like that's going to be even more the case in 11th edition. Now, not every army has a precision sniper type unit. Most do, and I would start there. They're super, super helpful for clearing out these characters. If your army does not have one, your next option is a sledgehammer. If you can't be precise, be heavy-handed. So getting a sledgehammer unit that can clear out an entire character unit is going to be the next most important solution to this problem. Whether that be your Death Shroud Terminators that can walk in and clear out a captain and his intercessors pretty quickly, or a large tank that can just blow them up. Whatever that may be, now is the time to get that and get the precision or sledgehammer involved. Now, a brief pause before we get on to the final addition that's going to be critical to you. I wanted to make sure you guys are aware, if you go to my website below, you get really cool merch. This is the 99th Krieg shirt from the story I wrote a few months ago. If you go check out my website, www.tylertartar.com, and select the Readers of the Wargame option, you're going to find a bunch of really cool merch there that we've got going for the channel. Now, the final thing you're going to need is probably actually one of the most important things that is often forgotten at this stage of the game, and that is your points monkeys. Your units that'll be scoring objective points throughout the game. Now, as we approach 11th edition, this may change a little bit on how it's done. From what I've heard, there have been little tweaks to it, but I assume the same units are still going to be able to accomplish similar things. This is where you're going to be bringing in Space Marine Infiltrators or Reavers or any of those lighter units that can move quickly and have scout and things like that to get different places on the board very fast and can score points with objectives that are non-killing in nature. Most of your units are going to be taken up by killing the enemy, but you also have other objectives throughout the game that you need to accomplish. These are done by these fast units. So, figuring out what these fast units are can be a little bit tricky sometimes when it comes to your army. For example, if you're playing a Craft World Eldar army, your points monkeys are typically just your guardians. They're the same ones you're using to hold back objectives and take objectives, while your aspect warriors do most of the killing. But in other armies, there are specific points monkeys. And figuring out which these are and how to use them is a little tricky. Going on Reddit and Facebook and having those conversations with other players, seeing how other players play as well, can help you figure that out pretty quickly. So I would highly recommend figuring out what your points monkeys are and picking them up here as the last part of your unit. Thank you guys for sticking with me throughout all of this. I hope this advice has been super helpful to you guys. If it has, make sure you give us a like and subscribe. We are currently building up to 1,000 subscribers. That is our goal to hit by hopefully the end of the year. And don't forget to go check out our merch, like this cool shirt here, as well as our Patreon, where we've got early access to all videos, access to the stories I've written for some of the fan fiction videos we've done as well as a lot of other really cool things. So thank you guys for joining us today, and I will see you guys in the next one.